So let me bring in the Stars of Heaven at this point.
Yeah.
When did they kind of come into your life?
Well, the thing about the Stars of Heaven is they really came into my life at a very kind of critical time, in the sense that I had just moved to Dublin in 1986, and they were, along with yourself and some other great bands, were really in 1986 just about to hit their stride as such. And so, age 17, I effectively made the decision to move to Dublin to be close to music, or if that makes sense.
You were coming from Kerry.
Kerry, yeah. I mean, I had been in UCC, and I'd started to study law there, and you know me, Tom, and anybody who does know me would know, what the hell were you doing studying law? But the thing is that I would have been good to keep going, because I could have sued myself for thinking about doing it in the first place, but I didn't. So I didn't get to the Dineen versus Dineen case never went to court. But so I did a interview for the civil service. This is my life story, not the Stars of Heaven. But I did an interview for the civil service, and I got the job. And what really convinced me about being in Dublin, or taking the job and leaving college, was Freebird Records, basically, and it being down the road from Kildare Street. And it's funny that you played Stars of Heaven there, because I was thinking today about that time. And maybe in the first week of being in the civil service, I was in Freebird every day on Grafton Street on the first floor. And one of those days, definitely in the first week, I saw Mike Scott in there, and they were playing the Stars of Heaven Sacred Heart Hotel, and he went to the counter and asked, "What is it?" And I went to the counter and asked, "Give me that." So that was where that came at that particular point. And
wow.
And over the next couple of years, I went to the Baggot. I used to go home to Kerry all the time, but I would go to the Baggot in the Underground, and on my own, just a kid really, just if I could meet that person now, I would think I would try to take care of him, but he was.
Sounds like he was taking care of himself.
Well, he was
at the right gigs.
He was at the right gigs for sure. And I think of all the music that I encountered in those couple of years, the Stars of Heaven were just the kind of, when you're coming up and you're just in a phase where you're deeply in love with music, and you're being exposed to it, or you have the choice to expose yourself to it for the first time, because in Kerry, the closest you get to sort of rock and roll would have been the choir at the novena or something like that.
That's pretty rock and roll.
Yeah, I got to be that close, but nothing greater than that. But it was basically a case of just being so hungry for music. And but of all the tastes that sort of I got to experience in the first few years, the Stars of Heaven were just that kind of band who had that something that really I identified with hugely. And so therefore I was a committed and huge fan from day one.
I'm going to play something from them now, because the first single that they released was on Hot Wire, the debut single, Clothes of Pride. I'm actually going to play the B-side, All About You, because I just love it. Yeah,
well, both sides. I mean, let's begin at the beginning. It was an insanely good start for them. That single, both songs, incredible. If you're going to start there, I think, it's a pretty...
Am I going mad playing All About You? I'm playing it because...
I think both sides are equally great.
Okay, Stan wrote it.
And this is off the vinyl copy?
Yeah.
This is a precious piece of vinyl.
It is precious. I have a horror story to tell you about the Sacred Heart Hotel.
Okay, we'll talk about it afterwards.
This is from I don't know if it's the B-side, but the other side of Clothes of Pride, All About You. I remember being startled when I heard that. I think I would have heard it on the Dave Fanning show as well, All About You. It's just lyrically, musically far ahead of where an awful lot of bands around at the time were.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that strikes me again, is that I don't know what it is, that chemistry that some people have, or that some bands have, or that they create together, but there is something about the Stars, and everything they do has some sort of quality that seems, to me anyway, seems to kind of be their own, Yeah. And when you read about them, or you talk to other people about them, you very often hear, people describe the obvious influences. But to me, I mean, maybe with the first couple of things, there was clear lines to certain things, like Graham Parsons or the Birds, maybe the Velvet Underground. But like the progression from that point to Speak Slowly was really a band who really found their own voice, And
I'm going to take a quick break and play something from Sacred Heart Hotel, which tragically I don't own on vinyl. It's one of the great stories, isn't it? Great to hear Donal Dineen back on the radio. The stars too. I'm in heaven. And one of my favourite memories of Donal was on No Disco when he played a video from David Gray, and after the video finished, he closed. That was from David Gray's album Sell, Sell, Sell. Something which, if it didn't.
Wasn't a bad line.
That's a good line, Donal. That's a good line.
Wasn't a bad one.
Yeah, more from the stars, more from Donal after this. You're very welcome back. Donal Dineen with us in the studio, taking a look back at the career and the music of the Stars of Heaven. It's worth saying that a lot of people think around the time that Ireland was just determined to produce the next U2, but that whole wave of bands that came through, particularly to the underground, that was a very different kettle of fish completely.
Yeah, and you're right. I think it's misrepresented, that period. You know, I mean, you're in the midst of it yourself, so it's probably. But I mean, my own objective opinion would be that there was sort of an array of things happening that really weren't at all in that same sort of field of what you two were doing. Stars of Heaven probably being the best example, but there were several others, you know.
Micro Disney,
a
house,
or Subterraneans.
Yeah, Subterraneans. None of whom wanted to be the next U2.
None of whom
had far humbler ambitions, which revolved around trying to make great music.
Humbler and far subtler. I think it's fair to say that would be. I think. And I don't think anybody really had much interest in trying to emulate them. And then, you know, it's just, I guess, you know, the way you are when you're in a town where there's one huge, it's not like the elephant in the room, but it's...
The Stars, in fairness, came out of the blocks like nothing else. John Peel picked them up. And then there was a whole... Did you hear the John Peel sessions at the time? Because I didn't ever manage to get John Peel.
I wasn't... No, I didn't actually listen to John Peel.
4 sessions.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
It was kind of unprecedented.
It was, yeah. Love them. That led to a deal with Rough Trade, which again is Jeff Travers, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's again, what a label to be with.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how they would feel about their life on the label, maybe. You know, I mean, I don't know how it went or anything like that, but I mean, they stood out, you know, for me anyway, they stood out a mile, and it was no surprise that they were picked up by them. But I don't know how it went when it came to the album time, To Speak Slowly, but yeah.
No, I think industry-wise, definitely it wasn't a happy marriage. It wasn't going well. But in terms of the band and doing gigs and the material they released, I told you the story about going into town to get the Sacred Heart Hotel, arriving home to find the Talking Heads album in the sleeve instead of...
It could have been worse though, Tom, you know.
I think to be honest, why I didn't ever get around to going back into town was that...
Talking Heads was alright.
That was a full-priced album, whereas...
Oh yes, the value.
Sacred Hotel was a mid-priced album, so I felt I'd actually done quite well.
Yeah.
But
for me, Sacred Heart Hotel, you know, like I bought it that day that Mike Scott was in Freebird, and again, you were asking me when they came into my life, but it was at that point where, you know, I just bought a deck, a turntable, and I just associate that record, and just hearing it before we started there tonight, it never fails to kind of evoke those feelings of that connection you have, and putting a needle on a record and hearing the sound, and it being that sound, and it's very evocative sound, you know.
I'm going to play another one from it. This is class. So you know.
Good.
Oh,
it's a good one.
That is Stars of Heaven. So you know, Donal, I have to fill you in on this. This is a lovely bit to follow up to that story. And I was telling you, I brought the Stars of Heaven Sacred Heart Hotel when I got home. It was the Talking Heads. Conor O'Mahony, do you remember that name?
Yes, I do.
Manager, Something Happens.
Yes.
Listening to us tonight in London.
Hey, Conor.
God bless you. He's just after tweeting a photograph of the album, which he said, as if by magic, I bought this for you recently.
Oh my God.
And it's on vinyl.
He's still looking
Conor.
after you. Still looking after you.
Love from Ireland, Conor.
Hey,
See
Conor.
you at the replacements. Wonderful. What is it about them that you love?
Well, I guess primarily it's probably, if it was one thing, it would probably be the obvious thing, Stephen's voice. And I think that he's just one of those people that kind of is able to, pack so much power into something in a way that sometimes it sounds restrained, and he can come across. On the gentler moments, I think it's so effective, and it's just one of those voices that kind of draws you in, and I know that it's one that, for me anyway, it's one that, you know, that connection that you make with a voice like that, it's like what we were talking about with making a connection with a DJ on the radio, but when you make that connection with a singer, it's a very powerful thing, and it just it's I guess it's one of the most remarkable things about music is that it can stay that way forever, you know.
Yeah.
And in his case, I was listening to this show, and he played 2 O'Clock Waltz there a while back, and it's one of those moments where, you know, I can still get the same thing from his voice. It just seems to endure, and I think it's so that's the thing I love the most. But just listening to that right there, I think that it has to be said that I guess we're lucky that we saw them live, and we saw them a lot, and but they really had many strings to their bow, you know, and Stan's guitar playing probably
Beautiful.
second in the list of things. But then, you know, there's you know, they had really an incredible ensemble, and together they were pretty incendiary at times, and but I think ultimately the voice and the words, you know, the words I think are exceptional.
I think the words are absolutely exceptional.
Yeah.
I think as somebody who's written lyrics, I always feel very uncomfortable around the stars and around.
Well,
around
I
Steve.
think just I mean,
It's
it was
got a turn of phrase.
the turn of phrase just
An easy observation.
yeah, very much
telling
so.
observation.
Very telling observations, and very natural, you know, like almost conversational sometimes. So I think 2 O'Clock Waltz is probably, you know, a very good example, and it just feels like he's telling you a story, you know. And there's to be that natural, it's so hard to be that natural, and yet again, it's like something that, you know, I guess what was great about them is that they didn't really have to kind of bang on a drum or shout it from the rooftops or anything like that. It was just quietly powerful, you know.
We played the track there from Sacred Heart Hotel, which was released in '86, made number 11 in the UK indie charts. They were doing okay. You know, the Peel sessions were opening an awful lot of doors for them. People were paying attention to the music, so it was going beautifully well. They then released the Hollyhead EP, which I'm happy to say I have as well. But I think if you ever want to hear a combination of the beautiful guitar work, absolutely beautiful guitar work, and then Stephen's voice. I've two going into one here. Still look through the window there. 200%. First is Before Hollyhead, excuse me, then into Widow's Walk. Take a listen to this. Widow's Walk, and before that, The Stars of Heaven again, and before Hollyhead. Donal, I have to ask you, what did you think listening to those tracks?
Oh God, I was just back on Bagot Street there, and I think that it just kind of sums up what I was trying to say there earlier about Stephen's lyrics, that you know, why do you get what you want when you don't want it anymore? And there's something, I suppose, there was a certain vulnerability in what he wrote about, or how he wrote, and it was also kind of effortless in the sense that there was no real attempt, you know, to make you know, there's kind of brazen attempts to be clever or to make a big statement, maybe like some others. But so I just found that very kind of heartening and very appealing.
Did you find, as I found listening to them, a little bit of surprise of exactly how good they sound now?
And not really. I think other people might be surprised.
Just when it went to one of the guitar breaks there, I literally went, wow.
Yeah,
I forgot how good they were.
Yeah, no, it reminded me of just some nights, long forgotten nights in the Bagot, where, you know, there was sort of, I mean, there was a lot of love for them in a sort of small sort of way. I guess the people who liked them loved them, and anybody who was exposed to them really got the message. But I'm not surprised how good they sound, because I think they're one of those bands who sort of achieve something or reach a place where they sound out of time, or they're not part of time, but their time, you know. And I think in their case it culminated in Speak Slowly, where and it was an album that was maybe you know, at the time people were maybe underwhelmed by it in some way, but I think that's because they found some other place.
Going to talk about it next, try and get a few tracks in from it as well. But I must say, there's an awful lot of love tonight for the Stars of Heaven. Anne McCoy on Twitter says, I don't think there's one song by the Stars of Heaven that still doesn't stand up today and sound.
I agree with that.
100% agree with that. Avril says, loving every minute of it. Great late night radio with Tom and Donal. It's a tragedy there is no room for Donal on national radio at the moment. Echo that.
It's a personal tragedy.
100%. Loving listening to Tom and Donal unfurl their
I feel
stories
like hitting the buttons,
stars.
Tom. Sorry.
I can say, and you know, in the whole time that I've done interviews in my entire life, you are the only person who has listened to the music. Yeah. Which I may say makes interviewing much more easy, because we don't have to because you're actually enjoying the music.
Well, that's what people are doing at home, so or wherever they are. So it's kind of like we should listen to the music. Listen to the music.
A quick break, and we're going to talk about what was to be their final album. We've Donal Dineen with us tonight, taking a look back at the Stars of Heaven and playing music from the Stars of Heaven, and you'll be able to hear it all again up on newstalk.com very shortly as well. But Donal, tell me a little bit about Speak Slowly, because it was the album that brought the whole thing to an end, and you mentioned that people were a bit underwhelmed by it at the time.
Yeah, I guess there was probably a little bit of that feeling. I know that at the time, the reviews were mixed, really, and because I was such a fan at the time, I probably was offended by such mixed reviews. But I believe firmly that it's one of those records that it's such a great achievement, and I think they worked so hard to develop their own sound. I think maybe that was what people found strange or reacted to strangely, was the fact that they had moved quite far from those early days, from Clothes of Pride, and I think that as a collection of songs, it just fits together in a way that very few records do. And I don't know how it feels like for the members of the band, because I'm conscious of the fact that for them it could feel very different, and they may have very different opinions about exactly how the cookie crumbled and how it went, because they disbanded pretty soon after that. But to me, I guess I see the kind of romantic side in it, that they achieved something phenomenal, I think, with that record, and I'm really all for trying to champion that in a way, because I just think it's one of those ones that any music fan from any walk of life or any place would really be able to pick up on the fact that it's a deep record with really amazing quality.
I really want to take a track from it, because I'm nervous of just talking too much about it and not giving people a chance to actually hear it. So I'm going to stick 28 in straight away. I was talking about finding it hard to pick tracks tonight, because there's so many that I absolutely love. But a few people texted this one, so I'm delighted to be able to keep them happy. Great track. 28 from the Stars of Heaven, from the Speak Slowly album. I've Donal Dineen with me in studio tonight, just looking back on the short career of this brilliant band. That album for you is the one that's where it all just crystallises.
Yeah, it is really, and I would say arguably one of the greatest LPs made in this country, and one of my favourite LPs ever. And it's just one of those ones that's it's so consistent, and I love the way it sounds. I think Stephen Street was the producer,
Stephen Street, that's right.
At the time, a very sought after producer, and
Smiths.
Yeah, the Smiths, exactly. But I don't know how, again, they would feel about it. But
I got to know them at that point.
Yeah.
That's when we started doing gigs together in the underground. They were unhappy.
Really?
Yeah, there was a sense when the album was coming out that they were kind of shrugging their shoulders, like they didn't care about it.
And do you think that's what sort of led to things falling apart?
I have a feeling it may have been. It was like the experience was becoming an unpleasant one for everybody.
Well,
which can happen in a band.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, I think that it's something that's it probably hits every band at some particular point, and at a critical point in your development, or even in your whatever it is that you're trying to do, it can really knock you down, And I could easily see why the perception of something can be very different, as in our perception can be very different from their experience of how it was, and I think maybe there's something ironic there in the sense
it's like
that
Big Star.
Big Star is a good example, but it's like there is some irony in the fact that we're talking about it 25 years later, and it didn't really help them or do a lot for them, maybe. So
if you talked to them at the time, and I did, I talked to them later when I started on radio, and they would kind of laugh a little bit, and they would say there was nobody at the gigs, but those who did go either formed bands or wrote about them.
Well, here we are. But the thing is that, can I just talk about the talking about it thing, because I went to college around that time, and I was studying, and we were doing a creativity project, and somebody, I had the idea of asking Stephen Ryan to be our interviewee, and a more gracious man you couldn't find on the planet, and I'm sure it's still exactly the same now. But the way he dealt with us, and we were just three eager students with big faces and big eyes and questions, but the way he dealt with us was kind of the model of how I dealt with people who came to me in the subsequent years, talking about helping them out with projects or radio based things or whatever, but so a true gentleman. But just on that one there, when you listen to 28, you think Bernard Walsh on the drums and Peter O'Sullivan, I mean he Peter there to the fore. I think I just reiterate the fact that to together they were something incredible. And maybe those gigs were really the point at which, you know, they were at their greatest, and maybe that's what they felt too, because I know for a fact that, you know, there's that they haven't really seen a band like them, really, you know.
No, nor have I. Their reputation is growing. Others have often fallen away, but that's a band that's absolutely growing. Lovely reaction, may I say, on Twitter. People are absolutely appreciating the music and absolutely appreciating you as well. Great to hear it, Dineen Parish, Ireland's best DJ.
Wow.
On the radio, people to hear it too.
Ireland's most unemployed DJ.
Radio will always matter. Have you followed Stephen's career since? There was The Revenants, which I loved. A different sort of band, more replacements-ish.
Yes, yeah, probably more, derivative of their influences, but an equally great band and 2 great albums. And no, I'm looking forward to the Dre's new record.
With Bated Breath.
Okay, yeah.
Bated Breath.
Yeah, no, I've heard great things and I have yet to see them live, but I'm really looking forward to it. We should probably say hello to Dave O'Grady, who's been a man who's been flying the Stars of Heaven flag for quite a while. So hi, Dave.
And I have to say Conor O'Mahony as well.
And Conor.
Right, I'm going to leave them with Lights of Tetuan.
Yeah,
which is a beautiful song.
Yeah, just how much that song touched me. I went to Tetuan years later on the basis of and I saw the Lights of Tetuan from maybe where Stephen saw it on the other side of the Gibraltar Straits in Spain, because so again, you know, I hung on his every word and I eventually went to Tetuan. Maybe not as great as the song, but you know.
Donal, it's been an absolute pleasure having you in the studio.
Likewise.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom.
Light. Hope we hear you on national radio again very soon.
You never know. Yeah.
We live in hope.
Yeah, we live in hope.
I leave people with Lights of Tetuan and The Stars of Heaven. I'll be playing them loads more on the Dre's when the album comes out. That's it for me this week. My thanks to Emma on production, Phil here on sound, Tom's been helping us tonight, and Donal. It's been an absolute pleasure. Is your bike locked up somewhere?
Yeah, I'm going to leave it there on the off chance.
All right, good stuff. Just the start.